Okay.
JD Vance just said in an interview that he thinks you are going to be the leading Democratic candidate for president in 2028. What's your response to that?
I mean, you know, I hope he is. That's what I'll say.
That he's the Republican nominee?
Yeah.
The Supreme Court ruled that trans. JD Vance just said in an interview.
I mean, if she runs in 28, I would support her over Vance, but like,
damn, they really hate her now, huh? They really hate AOC, huh? Jeez.
I've explained my worldview. I've explained why I believe what I believe and what I think's going to happen in the future. At this point, it kind of seems like the ship's going down no matter what, and we're rearranging chairs on the deck of the Titanic, and it's really just a matter of like who takes the blame for the fall. I don't really know. Maybe by 2028 it's going to be like a moot point anyway. Like the chips will already have fallen to the point where if AOC does win, she won't get blamed. I don't know. She's too compromised? Yeah, but it's not like there's a better alternative, right? If I say that I'm not willing to vote for AOC over JD Vance, what I'm essentially saying is that I'm just going to vote for JD Vance in 2028. I do want there to be conditions where I think, where I believe enough in the Democratic Party that I think that they could make a positive change. But, I don't know. I have to keep my choices open, I suppose. AOC is still several degrees better than Vance, though. AOC is, to be clear, obviously better than JD Vance.
Thanks.
In every possible way. By a large margin. It's not a question of whether or not she's better than him. It's a question of what is going to happen no matter what, and who takes the blame and how they respond to it. That being said, I think that AOC, as bad as she's been in some respects, would still have the political wherewithal to properly assign blame if everything fell apart.
That's a moth thing, I think, huh?
I would probably support AOC over Vance.
Probably?
So don't vote her to protect her. Not to protect her, but to protect the hearts, the fragile, tender, maiden's hearts of the Democratic Party. Not to protect her. I don't give a fuck about her. To protect the maiden heart of the Democratic Party. Is her kowtowing to Jeffries not also an ill omen? Buddy, it's ill omens in every fucking direction these days, okay? Not even a question if you want to protect women's autonomy, man. I don't know what you're talking about. Roe v. Wade got revoked during Biden's term. I don't know what you mean. You mean like for future Supreme Court replacements? Speak in specifics. I can address your concerns. I have said multiple times that I do not think any president is going to be able to stop what's coming. I think it's really just a matter of how the voting base assigns blame and how disenfranchised and apathetic it leaves them feeling. And for me, a worst case scenario, like a truly worst case scenario, would be somebody like Gavin Newsom or Kamala Harris winning, everything falling apart, and the Democratic constituency responding to that collapse by going, I guess it really doesn't matter who wins. I'm worried about apathy in the long run. That's why I'm so bullish about stuff like the DSA victories and getting out people like DeGette, you know? I want the Democratic voting base to be very active, very militant, because I think that'll be necessary not only to beat the Republicans, but to unify around the kinds of popular causes that will be necessary to pull us back from the brink of destruction. Or if necessary, rebuild after the destruction. Does that make sense? It's not really about AOC in particular, it's more about, like, how things are going to play out in the long run. But yeah, it's not a question of, like, who would be the better leader. You know, of course AOC would be better than J.D. Vance. Gavin Newsom and Kamala Harris would be better than J.D. Vance. I just worry about what might happen if they win. I want to avoid a Biden 2.0, basically, where a Democrat wins against an increasingly insurgent fascist Republican Party and then does nothing. And then over the course of 4 years, we just watch the Democrats fumble constantly while Republicans gain more and more cultural power, and then you end up getting like a Trump 3.0 situation. That's what I want to avoid. I want to avoid a repeat of what happened with Biden. And by the way, what happened with Biden was exactly what me and other left-leaning people said was going to happen, that Biden was not able to meet the moment, that he would be weak, and that in his weakness, the Republican Party would regrow and flourish, and that afterwards he, or in this case, Kamala Harris, because he dropped out, would be beaten by an even more powerful, more far-right Republican Party.
Okay, I'm good. Have you looked at the Bulwark's Reddit community and their YouTube video comment sections? They're all leftists because Tim Miller refuses to criticize leftists. Well, also because leftists are just more active online. Again, like how many lib left communities are there besides mine and Ethan Klein's? Are there any?
And then it was Richard Spencer.
Hutch. That's one.
Now it's Nick Fuentes. This is a stock character in American discourse, and I just refuse to take the bait.
I don't think David Duke is a marginal figure. I mean, I will say
You don't
this.
think David Duke is a marginal?
David Duke? Really? Huh? Wait, what? How is David Duke not marginal? When does he ever come up? Like, he came up recently because a journalist reached out to him and asked him what he thought about Darialisa Abila Chevialet. I don't know how to. I still don't know how to say that name. He asked David Duke about her 2020 tweet where she basically was doing some like anti-interracial relationship stuff, and David Duke was like, "I love it, I love it. Every race has the right to want to preserve their race." Or I don't know.
Here's what I mean.
Chevialet. I think it's Chevialet. DAC is easier. It's easier.
I think John Gans, who's a sort of, he's a great Substack and is a sort of interesting history.
That's a bizarre thing for Ezra Klein to say, that David Duke is not marginal. Like, I think he's dating himself. I think David Duke used to be maybe more influential at some point, but I don't think so. I think he's kind of always been pretty marginal.
Of American politics. He's got this book about the 90s called When the Clock Broke, I believe. And I've had him on to talk about the book. And the argument he would make about David Duke, about a bunch of figures who rose in that period, Patrick Buchanan, Samuel Francis, is that if you look at what they were figuring out about politics, I mean, David Duke, by the way, we should note, ran for office. He did not come that far from winning for Louisiana governor. In the 90s.
Sure. Who cares?
You know, there was a
Yeah, he's dating himself, for sure.
Bro, the 90s? Motherfuckers were popping their AOL CDs into their fucking DVD drive.
The Duke Chevialet story is strange because it got pushed mostly by conservative outlets as a wedge, of course. The Duke Chevialet?
No!
What?
Don't do it!
What story is this? Chevialet Duke. I don't even know what is this? Oh, sorry, David Duke. Jesus Christ. I'm sorry. No. I'm slow.
I'm sorry. It would have been CD drives. There weren't even DVDs yet. To get on the fucking internet. What do you... Bro, politics is... Why are we talking about this right now? Holy shit!
Of politics that they got kind of quite good at figuring out. And Gans's view, and I agree with this view, is that much of what the populist right is today is built on that, often quite explicitly with Samuel Francis and others. Okay, make your case.
Absolutely not. I mean, look, for those of us who are... Look, I'm in the institutional right. I know the people. I know the personalities. I know the organizations. That figure... is a pain in the ass. Nobody wants it. Nobody likes it. Nobody believes in it. And in fact, that figure, as we found out recently with the revelations about the Southern Poverty Law Center, is not only a useful tool for institutions on the left, but in many cases,
I don't know if I can listen to this again, actually.
What were the allegations? Like, I think the Southern Poverty Law Center
funds everything. Every extremist right movement. All the right movements are funded by the libs. Every single one, by the way. All of them.
They had paid people to infiltrate white supremacist groups. And I think Trump's DOJ is accusing them of like funding white supremacists or something like that.
Secretly funded by the kind of left-wing civil rights outfit known as the SPLC.
Which we were talking about David Duke?
Not David Duke in particular, who knows? But I'm saying that...
You're saying David Duke is maybe a left-wing plant?
Yes.
100%. I think that's
Why are you laughing, you fucking retard? He's so
Oh, dear. Hang on.
About the Southern Poverty Law Center is not only a useful tool for institutions on the left, but in many cases was actually secretly funded by the kind of left-wing civil rights outfit known as the SPLC.
Which we were talking about David Duke?
Not David Duke in particular, who knows? But I'm saying that...
You're saying David Duke is maybe a left-wing plant?
Yes.
I think
100%.
Oh, my God. Well, he's just lying there. There's no way he believes that. There's no way he actually believes that.
Did Hutch not follow the indictments? I know he read them, or maybe he doesn't understand the strategy behind them. This was the point of those indictments, guys. The point of those indictments was to be able to say, because look at the Republican playbook has been trying to say that none of the right-wing stuff was actually real. And if it was real, it's just because Antifa funded it. They did it with January 6th. They did it with the Whitmer plot. They said, oh, that was all just the FBI. That wasn't even real Republicans trying to do it. They've done it with every single assassination attempt. Tyler Robinson got radicalized by gadget games and online femboys. They like with every, and then with the SPLC, it is, oh, look, well, even the Charlottesville people and everybody were all paid for by libs. That's what the whole point of all of it.
He's just lying.
Why are you laughing? You fucking retard. He's so fucking
I appreciate his scorn right here. I think that's the appropriate response.
stupid. That's the entire point of the SPLC indictment. You fucking weren't even alluded to. I'm sorry. That was the entire point of the SPLC indictment. That was the entire thing that he was referencing earlier. When he said earlier, he literally said these movements would have been too weak to exist if not for the massive funding coming from the SPLC, which ironically enough was a right-wing obscure talking point that was then made politics and mainstream by the Department of Justice, by Trump's
Ezra should not have these conversations if you can't challenge those people on their bullshit. I 1000% agree.
Department of Justice. Another example of connecting a fucking meme that, oh, everybody's in it.
It's, I still maintain it is well-intentioned, but it's extremely irresponsible.
And people plan everybody's blah, 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 into a fucking political reality, which is, oh, here we've got some bullshit indictments for the SPLC, so every fucking loser can use the talking point that all of the Nazis that we disavowed in the past said weren't even real. Now we're going to acknowledge they were real, but they were funded by the left. This is how is Ezra surprised by that statement? Wait, what? You think that they were majority funded? What? How can that be a surprise to you? What do you think the point of those indictments were? Does Ezra Klein legitimately think that the only way those organizations could exist was with SPLC funding? Is that what he thinks?
Who knows? But I'm saying that
David Duke maybe a left-wing plant.
yes,
I think
100%.
that's ridiculous.
I'm not saying that in the sense of totally holy created.
Well, okay, all right. He got there. Hang on. We have to be fair. He got there. He unpaused and he called it ridiculous. That's the appropriate reaction.
But certainly used by, right? The whole idea was
It's not the fact that he called it ridiculous. It's the fact that he wasn't aware that that's what the conservative playbook has been for a while, that they've been trying to relabel every single thing as left-wing funded and everything. Yeah. Oh, I need to download. Today we will download the Polymarket app once I beat this game. I should be able to walk you guys through that. How do you get, because you can't put money on it from the desktop thing if you're American. Not that they're, I think you have to do like from Coinbase or something. I need to bet on this stuff. Bro, do you think Plattner's going? No, this must be like a low volume market or something.
I would bet that he...
This shit spiked like crazy, but it could just be people being emotional. Oh, shit. Bring up, hold on, oh god, I'm so close, I'm gonna come. Please bring up the fact that, wasn't Hillary and Bill like in a picture with fucking David Duke like 50 years ago or something? Wasn't this a talking point at one point? I forget all the older KKK talking.
I don't think it was David Duke, right? I think what he might be talking about is there was a former Grand Wizard of the KKK.
Oh, I just assumed that was David Duke. He doesn't bring it up.
Don't tell me.
So.
Fuck. Bird. Something Bird.
The passer?
Shit. What's his first name? Not Big Bird. Although he is a pretty notorious white supremacist. Is it Robert Bird? That sounds right. Larry Bird? No. Shit. I think it was Robert Bird. Hang on.
Say Larry Bird? Wait, that
Robert
is the basketball
Bird?
player, right? Am I crazy?
Yes. Yes. And it's spelled B-Y-R-D. I think he was a former Grand Wizard of the KKK.
Okay, real talk move.
He first entered the political arena by organizing and leading a local chapter of the Ku Klux Klan.
Why does the KKK
okay,
have
so
like
I guess
sick
maybe he
as
wasn't a former
fuck?
Grand Wizard.
Like
outfits
and names for things like the grand, like all their rankings, like the Grand Wizard. That's kind of sick, no?
His last remaining,
it is.
I think
They
2
got
or
good
3
branding.
decades, being a pretty tireless champion of civil rights. And when he died, the NAACP helped.
I joined. I'm not a
eulogize
racist.
Robert
I just
Bird.
want to be the Grand
So, like,
Wizard.
that's how much he reformed. He spoke about his time with the KKK. I think with like great shame and regret. But then conservatives on social media, they were in 2016 when Hillary was running, they kept on accusing her of like being friends with like a KKK person. Like that's how they watered down that story. They left out some like obviously really crucial context. Like yes, he was former KKK, but then he spent the rest of his life after leaving the KKK like fighting for civil rights. I think maybe that's what he's talking about.
Points for the conservatives. I feel like this was a thing or something. Or he attended
David Duke, I don't think had any connection to the Clintons.
something.
was this kind of smear effect where the media would go out and say this bad person supports your campaign, and then you have to disavow and go through this whole kind of routine.
But the point I'm kind of interested in here is, I mean, my view, and I think this is a fairly wide held view, is my worry is that the institutional right is getting steamrolled. Like,
By whom?
Yeah. In many cases, in order to survive, it is dramatically changing what it is, like the Heritage Foundation.
Sure.
In other cases, by Donald Trump.
The institutional right has completely collapsed and surrendered to like the populist right. Like that transformation has been complete for a while now. Who is even left that we can claim represents kind of the old guard of the Republican Party? You have like Susan Collins, who votes with Trump like 96% of the time or something like that. Everybody else has been pushed out of the party, like slowly over time. Each new cycle, like more and more of the old guard drops like flies. You had people.
Bro, there's no way these are real fucking posts. I don't trust anything related to the Middle East, okay? Because people just be making names up and countries up and shit, and Americans don't know. I just got off the phone with a former Iraqi Sawa commander who served with the Desert Brigade from its founding in 2005 until 2010. During that time, he frequently operated alongside Kilo Company from Plattner. Plattner frequently operated alongside Kilo Company, 3rd Battalion, 8th Marines, and Ramadi, the capital of Al-Anbar province in western Iraq. He shared some disturbing details about a Marine named Grand Plattner. According to the commander, there was a recurring pattern involving their interpreter who would arrange visits to a local woman running a prostitution house. She had several underage daughters. Plattner and a couple of other Marines would go to the house, often setting up an observation point with their Iraqi counterparts. The story took a darker turn when he described how it started. During what was supposed to be a routine raid on the home, they discovered it wasn't a terrorist hideout. It was a brothel operated by a single mother who had lost her husband. After that first encounter, the visits became regular. 2 or 3 Marines, including the interpreter, would disappear inside the house for an hour, sometimes up to an hour and a half. The Iraqi Sawa fighters were always positioned outside, securing the area between the roof and the front gate. They were never allowed inside. The commander was emphatic. He said he was 110% certain that Grand Plattner and 1 or 2 others were paying for sex with both the mother and her other underage daughters. No
oyster
shot.
farmer? I don't think so.
What?
No way the oyster farmer would do that.
Oh man, no way.
Like Jeff Flake. You had people like Mitt Romney. You had people like Ben Sass, who, you know, I disagree. Liz Cheney. Like, there's dozens of Paul Ryan. He wasn't voted out. He decided to get the fuck out of there. Which that should tell you something, guys. Paul Ryan was widely regarded as the future of the Republican Party.
Yep.
The conventional wisdom was that he was obviously going to run for president at some point. He retired after 2 years.
Yep.
Donald Trump.
That was crazy. Nobody even remembers Paul Ryan anymore, but that guy was like he was the shining star of the Republican Party. He's gone.
At the time, he was the youngest Speaker of the House. Am I wrong about that? And he decided to retire from politics. He saw where that fucking story was going. He's still a Republican shithead who serves on the board of Fox News, I think, for example. So he hasn't like renounced his conservatism. But yeah, it's been like 3 or 4 dozen, maybe more, of the old guard of Republicans have just dropped like flies over the last like 4 to 5 election cycles. And now the party has been completely subsumed by the lunatic right-wing populace.
Trump was not the candidate of the institution.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, one, in many cases, in order to survive, is dramatically changing what it is, like the Heritage Foundation. Sure. In other cases, by Donald Trump. Donald Trump was not the candidate of the institution.
Sure.
Obama.
Notice how the only thing that guy agreed with there is is the Heritage Foundation. Why? Because it's a little bit too like mainstreamist Republican. I don't know if the Heritage Foundation is fully bought into like the Jews control everything. Like that was the only really. That's the thing that you're going to agree is like, oh yeah, they're maybe a little bit too captured. The Heritage Foundation, really?
Wait, didn't the Heritage Foundation initially? Didn't the president of the Heritage was it the Heritage Foundation? Didn't the president of the Heritage Foundation initially like stick up for Nick Fuentes, and then got a bunch of pushback? Wait, hang on.
What does he mean by stick up for Nick Fuentes, though?
Was
That
it that
depends.
he initially spoke out against Nick Fuentes, but then, like, the young staffers at Heritage Foundation, like, revolted? What was the story about that? Did you see the Plattner stuff? I did, but... Wait, is there new stuff? Did the stuff come out?
Not yet.
There's a lot of chatter about Plattner. Has the story actually come out?
Institutional right. And the institutional right had its way. Jeb Bush would have been the nominee. I mean,
Ryan Getty,
does
ladies and
Hutch
gentlemen.
know?
What's up, buddy?
the idea that the institutional right has been racking up victory.
What do you mean, know what?
I mean, the Republicans saw speaker after speaker after speaker till they got one who was more
What that
like
Grand
compliant.
Plattner things is?
No, nobody knows. We're all waiting to find out.
Oh, well, Hutch was making it. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading into it. It sounded like he knew. He was like, "Did the story come out yet?"
Well, no, because I think
wait.
everybody's hearing the chatter. Nobody knows the what the story is yet, though. Yeah.
Institutional right is not a strong win record. And again, part of my argument.
No, they're getting fucking destroyed. They're getting dominated. Like the Democratic, like the institutional Democrats are getting gut checked right now, but they're nowhere close to like the institutional Republicans of, say, like 2016 or 2018. They've just completely taken over that party.
I think this is
Hajat Ali retweeted this. He's just sick. I don't know what the fuck this guy is. Plattner isn't feeling well. He wasn't at the July 4th event either, but his campaign was there. Who is this person? Do they work for the campaign? How the fuck would they know?
Has not had a strong winning record, bro. They were entirely supplanted in 2016. I'm sorry, where have you been, Ezra? The entire institutional lawmaker, every part of the right has been supplanted for a decade. Are you not in politics? Am I crazy right now? Where the fuck are these people at? What have they been watching or doing?
Because it keeps thinking it can maybe control these forces and it can't. You asked me earlier to sort of be more specific on a story, so I want to talk about the story you did.
Heritage president stuck up for Carlson interviewing Fuentes. Then they got pushed back, then sort of walked it back. My understanding was that there were a lot of young staffers in Heritage that were pissed that he walked it back. So there was like an internal revolt because there was a lot of like internal Groiper support within Heritage Foundation, is my recollection of the events.
In November, you wrote a piece with the title,
Someone TLDR what the Platinum News is. There's just a lot of chatter.
Whatever it
looks a
is,
lot like
people are
the
saying it's
chatter
bad.
That, preceded the New York Times story that dropped a few weeks ago. There's a lot of chatter right now about another story that's coming out about Plattner. That's really, really bad. And I don't know. People are hyping it up that it's worse than the New York Times story.
Uh-oh.
I would caution against just like taking that at face value because there was a lot of hype around the last story as well.
Yeah, but that was the lib. That was the lib story. Now we got the real attack dogs out.
So for now, there's just a lot of chatter. There's just a lot of chatter.
the largest funder of Al-Shabaab is the Minnesota taxpayer. Tell me what the piece was about.
Sure. So this was a feature investigation.
How bad would you rate it? If the raping Iraqi kids is true, I think that'd be pretty bad. That's probably, I would say it's probably campaign ending at least. Yeah.
Okay, but are they white kids?
You know, I don't know if that actually, don't know if that's going to matter here. Can I really not? Oh.
We did in Minnesota, looking into organized Somali fraud, and so we spent a number of months on this piece.
No
Minnesota, documents, we interviewed law enforcement,
well?
on the record, background, and then our story, and this had been kind of bubbling up in local press and bits and pieces, was that in fact Somali fraudsters were exploiting Minnesota and federal welfare programs, autism programs, daycare programs, Medicaid programs, and looting.
Can we also talk about the fact that Donald Trump has pardoned how many, like, actual convicted fraudsters?
Oh, so Blue, no matter who was alive.
Kind of astonishing. I'm pretty sure he's pardoned dozens of people convicted of fraud, like actually pardoned them, which meant that they didn't have to like pay back the money that they stole from people.
The restitution.
Billions of dollars from American taxpayers. And this is a story that really blew open the Somali fraud story on the national stage. And then since then,
well, it was a huge amount of money. Well, I thought it was $250 million for the big case for the Feeding Our Future, whatever. Is there something else released about this? It might have been that I missed it. I don't even know what I'm
and as sometimes happens when you report on an explosive story, it kind of ricocheted into an entire movement, really looking at large-scale fraud in American public
We
institutions.
pardoned a few last week. I feel like there's been like literally dozens of stories of like, you know, the wife of some guy who was convicted of, you know, literal billions of dollars of fraud, attended a, you know, like private donor dinner that's like $100,000 a ticket and donated like $2 million to Trump's whatever fund. And then the next week their husband gets like a full pardon. President Donald Trump pardoned 11 people on Friday, including 9 people.
You know what's if this happened to a Republican, the Republicans would all be out there coming up with like ways to defend him.
True, but I'm remembering Plattner's response now to the fucking tattoo thing. I could just imagine him being like, "These allegations are false. I did have sex with a woman, but she was of age. I know she was of age. I know she was." He holds that line for like 2 weeks, and then the pictures come out, and it's like a fucking 7-year-old. Good luck, Plattner.
Hitting a federal air pollution law.
Republicans would be on Fox News being like, "Wait, it's different there. You guys don't understand. That's
What's
their
the age
culture."
of consent in Afghanistan or Iraq?
Was there one about fraud? Trump granted clemency to Adam Kidden, a former business partner of disgraced
Muhammad
lobbyist
did it.
Jack Abramoff.
Oh, so Chris Kyle can kill children, but we can't fuck them, really?
Pleaded guilty to fraud and conspiracy charges and was sentenced to nearly 6 years in prison. That same year, Abramoff went to prison after pleading guilty to tax evasion, conspiracy to bribe public officials, and mail fraud.
So
There's like literal dozens of fraudsters that he's pardoned.
I just thought she was really short.
Really? Large-scale fraud. It ricocheted into large-scale fraud for the American public institutions. That's it? That's what we're going to just that? For all of them? It wasn't hyper-focused on one particular thing or one particular type of people? Or
a couple pieces of it. So as you know, the fraud had been reported elsewhere at the Star Tribune. It had been in national news. Yeah, there were bits and pieces. There were prosecutions, right, which is where a lot of the information came from. It began in 2022 under the Biden administration. The big sort of move you made in this was to say this is financing foreign terrorism. What was that argument?
Sure. I mean, the argument is pretty simple, and the mechanics of it are this. So we have billions of dollars being stolen by Somali fraudsters in Minnesota. We then have huge amounts of money being transported out of Minneapolis Airport, Seattle Airport, in cash, in actual physical currency, in suitcases that goes to Mogadishu, and then when in Mogadishu, it is distributed to various parts of the country through what's called the Hawala Network. Hawala Network is the name for kind of informal, cash-based, clan-based financial institutions. They don't have a strong formal banking system in Somalia. It's a rough part of the world, and so they have these couriers that move money in cash. And all kinds of think tanks, military, U.S. government, Department of Justice.
I don't know anything about this story, so I haven't done any research. Do you think Ezra Klein knows anything about this story, and he's done some level of research, or?
Probably not.
Democrats
Oh, no.
have
that's
made
me!
have essentially made the case that Al-Shabaab is taking a cut of Hawala financing. And so when we talked with federal law enforcement agents and investigators who have been working on this case, they told us that the flow of funds was this: from the taxpayer out of the airport in suitcases to the Hawala networks in Somalia, and therefore to the Al-Shabaab terror networks taking their cut. Essentially, like we have Visa that takes like 3% of your credit card transactions. In parts of Somalia, Al-Shabaab takes a cut. Not exactly sure how much that is, and federal investigators say, hey,
Son's
once it
nervous on
exits the
his
country
stream,
into the
people are
Hawala
asking
system,
him to defend
you can't claw
Graham
that money
Plattner.
back. There are no,
Breaking
no
news?
written receipts or banking transactions. But the scale
I've got Claude on the case. We'll get a fact check here in just a second.
of that money that was remittances from fraud was so enormous that over time we're talking about huge sums of money.
So I want to take a beat on whether or not this turned out to be true. So the key named source in your story was a retired terrorism investigator named Glenn Kearns. He later came out, claimed that he was misquoted. He said later the story was bullshit.
Oh, so we're going to finally get into the weeds on one particular story, and holy fuck, thank God, Ezra Klein may be fucking prepared for this one section. Well, while letting him fucking mentally destroy us for the past hour and a half. Finally, maybe. Okay.
And that he did no on-the-ground investigating in Minnesota. The two top prosecutors of the fraud in Minnesota said the perpetrators were motivated by greed. There's no evidence of terrorist financing. Do you still stand by that?
Of course I do, yeah. And a couple things. So the Glenn Kearns detective is very odd. We have him.
One of the, some guy said this in my
He's like, yeah, of course I do.
Right, actually. And it's true. One of the ways, I've said this a lot, that you can tell, I call this that table thing, that you can always tell somebody's full of shit, is when they have a belief, that belief is based on some pieces of evidence, and then you go through the evidence, and every time you take away some piece of evidence, the belief actually gets stronger.
True.
Like,
That's wild, dog.
what the,
This guy
that
is so
shows you that the
smart.
belief was never founded on evidence in the first place. Oh, I call this the floating table, right? How much weight can this table hold? 100 pounds. Well, I kicked one leg out. How much can it hold now? Now it can hold 150. Okay, I kicked the second one. It's almost ready.
Bruh, you're
Okay,
losing.
it has no legs now. Is it on the ground? No, my table can hold 10,000 pounds floating.
Verdict unproven. The underlying fraud is real and largely accurate as described, but the specific claim that stolen money was funneled to Al-Shabaab rests on anonymous sourcing and has not been substantiated by any public evidence, court filing, or prosecutor. As of now, federal investigators say that there's no evidence for it, and the overseas money that has actually been traced mostly went to Kenya, not Somalia.
Yeah, like, it's fucking retarded.
On the record, we have a transcript of his interview. I'm not sure what happened. My suspicion is that when this story blew up into a huge national story, he got spooked or scared. But the paper in Minneapolis tried to go through our piece.
No, I don't use like Fable 5. I think would be massively overkill.
Fable 5. He's got the
I
secret.
use Opus 4.8 and put the effort on max.
And with a kind of criticism, couldn't lay a glove on it. Didn't debunk or even really contradict any of our points. You had one source who knows, don't know his personal circumstances. But
He was the only named source.
I don't think he was the only named source in the piece.
He was the only named source making this terrorism argument.
Well, incorrect. So we had
incorrect. Hold
multiple
on.
high-level federal officials who confirmed to us the flow of funds. We substantiated it with contextual reporting from Foundation for
Confirmed the flow of funds? As in, once funds were in another country, they could go anywhere? I don't understand, like, the argument that, like, I fund terrorism in every country on the planet if we're going to make that argument. Because when I buy something, if I donate $20 to Melina's stream, I send her $20, and she goes and she spends that money on Swedish extremist terrorists. Am I funding terrorism? Like, what is that argument? The connection is so loose. You need an intentionality at the start to say that it's funding terrorism. Otherwise, the argument is bullshit.
Apparently, there's no evidence that this money was funneled to Somalia or Somalia just generally, let alone Al-Shabaab.
Or you need a significant percentage of the funds to be hijacked. Not just like the flow of funds. Anytime somebody says some shit like the flow of funds, what do you mean? What percentage of the fund? Do people know about this at all points in the transaction? How much are we talking? Just
Defense of Democracies, from the United States Military Academy, from the Department of Justice. We were saying simply, logically, if we know from a variety of sources that Al-Shabaab is skimming off the Hawala network, and we know from a variety of sources that money is moving through that network from fraud.
Oh my God. Jesus Christ, you guys.
he's so disgusting.
Hutch?
We've kind
He's
of
gonna come in here, bro.
What?
I feel like we've kind of
You
we've
can't say
kinda
that about him.
we've gotten used
Good
to
one.
a lot of the Trump stuff. Like I see this and I almost like feel nothing. If I would have seen this in 2016, I would have been like viscerally furious. But now I see stuff like this. I was like, yeah, this is, well, that seems about normal for him. It's just unbridled racism.
Yeah. Or,
you know, lesser talked about.
I'll show
thing
you unbridled
these days.
racism.
It's just how Republican politics has devolved into just unbridled, explicit racism.
Fraud committed in the United States. It's a logical syllogism, right? A, B.
But Hutch, you don't understand. They're so good at fraud that we can't even find the evidence. True, I didn't even think of that.
a logical syllogism. What a fucking joke. Are you oh my god. It's okay.
And so we know that this to be true. And I think that idea that
It's okay to not be okay, you know?
they weren't motivated by terrorism is not something we alleged and is essentially irrelevant. The facts as they...
How's she doing these days? I wonder how she's doing. What's that rep up to these days? Did you see the repost about the Muslim kindergarten students that he did this morning? No, Jesus Christ. Do I even
Jesus.
want to know? I can hear Asman in my head laughing and saying it's a base tweet. True.
played out were that...
Do you see what he just said? It wasn't motivated by terrorism. They didn't. So it's exactly what I just said. It's exactly what I just said. Money is going to some country. Once that money's in that country, it's impossible to say where exactly it goes. And there are bad elements in that country that can skim money off the top of any money in that country. Therefore, anything happening in the United States is funding terrorism. Like, it's...
something we alleged and is essentially irrelevant. The facts as they played out were that through that network from fraud committed in the United States. It's a logical...
I think the overarching issue here is that Ezra, motivated by who knows what, I get the sense that Ezra Klein is motivated by some kind of effort to like embody a sort of ethics or like moral system. Like, I think he's trying to set a good example.
Cringe.
But I don't think he fully appreciates the fact that people like Christopher Rufo regard Ezra Klein with just utter contempt. Like, I hate saying this about Ezra Klein because I generally like Ezra Klein, but I think Ezra Klein is kind of a useful idiot for the right. I don't get quite as animated as Destiny does during these reactions, but I understand the frustration. Which, you know, what is
Dear leader
particularly
animated?
frustrating about Ezra Klein is that he does
should know better.
have some, I would say, like very valuable commentary when it comes to like policy discussions.
No!
Nice dodge.
I'm a regular listener of his podcast. He very frequently brings people on the podcast to educate me on stuff that I knew nothing about. He brought on an accountant like 3 or 4 weeks ago. And that accountant explained all these various tax loopholes that occur from like super wealthy people. That was a very useful episode to listen to. I got a lot of value out of that episode, but it just seems like every time he has these conversations with these
Easy,
right-wing
dodged.
actors,
He's gonna take it for a ride.
either
He's gonna take it for a ride. Say it, Hutch.
really painfully naive, or he's either painfully naive about like the true nature of these right-wing actors, or he's naive in the sense that maybe he thinks that he can like, I don't know, maybe he thinks that he can repair some of the damage. Like maybe he thinks he can save them by being reasonable and treating them with respect and
LeMayo.
making all these efforts to
LeMayo.
treat them as a peer, as like an equal, but in doing so, I think he puts himself in the back foot without really fully understanding it. But one way or the other, I think he's naive, you know. He's doing it for views. I don't like to me.
I don't think so. I think he's
definitely don't
ideological
get
driven.
grifter vibes
Yeah, I don't think so.
from Ezra Klein. I'm a bit biased in favor of liberals, so you know maybe I'm compromised, but I don't think he's a grifter. I do think he's really naive. I don't think he understands the war that people like Christopher Rufo are fighting. Like, it's very similar to Hassan, you know, like
Yes.
the way that Hassan operates. I think Hassan thinks that it is ethical and virtuous to lie
That
in
was a sick
service of
dodge.
your larger, you know, like political project. When he talks about doing like propaganda, it's a lot like JD Vance.
You're owning
And that
it, dude.
Quote from JD Vance. If I have to create a story to get the media to pay attention to this thing, I'll do it. I think Hassan works the same way. I think Christopher Rufo works the same way. I think Christopher Rufo probably knows that he's like is probably lying. It's not just like
Yeah, he does.
he convinced himself that there was actual fraud going on and they were sending it to Al-Shabaab in Somalia. I think he's just lying about that.
Correct.
And I guess this kind of goes back to the debate that we've had on Live and Learn or the debate that I had with Pisco like a month ago, where I was asking Pisco, like, if somebody demonstrates themselves to be dishonest or bad faith, then what is the value of continuing a conversation with somebody like that, assuming good faith for the rest of their answers? Why would you not just assume that they're lying all the time?
True.
From that point on. And it doesn't. I don't know. I wouldn't treat someone like Christopher Rufo as a peer if I was Ezra Klein. Ezra Klein is very, very clearly a thoughtful, intelligent person. Is very, I think, clearly
Not as thoughtful as
motivated
intelligent
by
as your
a
leader.
desire to get
Good
at
one,
the
Moten.
truth
Good
of
one,
things.
Dog.
And when he has conversations with people that
Don't
are
be
just
mad
like
'cause you're
dropping
losing.
thermonuclear
I'm not
bombs
moving.
on the
Or
truth,
losing.
in the way that this guy has, in particular, this guy's been very aggressive in that respect during the Trump era.
No.
It just kind of undercuts your credibility a little bit, I think. Bro, do you seriously not think Hassan is grifting? I didn't say that about Hassan. I said that about, maybe that was confusing. I was saying Ezra Klein, I don't think is a grifter. Okay, tonight's Live and Learn, guys, is gonna be early.
Oh, come on, bro.
Are you fucking serious,
Kisco
bro? Part
wants
timers,
to
dude. Part
watch like
timers.
a World Cup match, I think. That starts at the same time as the regular time. So we're gonna start today's Live and Learn at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. So we're gonna stop there, take a little break. I gotta get some things done before that happens. And tomorrow we'll be on at the regular time. I also put a call out on Discord. If you guys aren't in the channel and you didn't see that, I want to take some time this week to familiarize myself more with DSA as an organization. I want to get to know their history a little bit more.
Uh-oh.
I want to get to know like the different DSA chapters, like how their organization
You're gonna
is
find out that they were
structured,
co-opted.
how their
Oh, really?
policy platform has like evolved over time. That Atlantic article I just thought was like fascinating, and it made me want to learn more about them. So if you guys are familiar, if you guys are aware of any videos that you think would help illuminate like what DSA is all about, we have a channel in the Discord called React Suggestions, and yeah, feel free to drop some suggestions for those. And I think we'll spend one day this week, I don't know which day that will be, kind of diving into DSA more. All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. And I hope to see you after the break in about 3 hours and 13 minutes when Live and Learn starts at 3 p.m. Pacific again. 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. East Coast. Okay, bye, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I love you. Bye.
He's gone? Now
Are you
what?
fucking serious, bro? It's like he doesn't even give a fuck about us. Somebody said that in this debate, Sam Harris goes way harder. Or I'm sorry, Ezra Klein goes way harder.
So I reached out to you by email. I felt this article was totally unfair. It
Probably on a
accused
liberal, huh?
Look at this guy. What the fuck? Is Ezra Klein like 12 here?
us of peddling junk.
Also, okay, is this a fashion thing, or if a girl walked up to me like this, I would assume we're fucking. Why are her shorts unbuttoned? Do they need to be?
Who, are you talking about Yuffie?
Yeah, what the fuck? Why?
She's 15, man.
Yeah, but that's even more so. Like, is that
Okay,
a fashion
I don't know
thing?
why her shorts are unbuttoned. I don't know. That's weird.
Science and pseudoscience and pseudoscientific racialist speculation and trafficking in dangerous ideas. And I mean, Murray got the worst of it, but at minimum, I'm painted as a total ignoramus, right? There was one line which said, while I have a PhD in neuroscience, I appear to be totally ignorant of facts that are well known to everyone in the field of intelligence studies. And
I think that you should quote the line if you want to quote a line.
okay, so the quote
I don't think that's what the line said.
this is the exact quote. Sam Harris appeared to be ignorant of facts that were well known to everyone in the field of intelligence studies.
Great.
Now that's since been quietly removed from the article, but it was there and it's archived. So that's what I was reacting to. And I sent you an email where I was pretty pissed because, again, I felt I was treated
Slighted.
totally unfairly.
Oh
and
my
as was
God.
Murray.
Did you see
And
this earlier?
I was especially
Interrupting our
You see Mike from PA making fun of Hutch for his look?
Oh, Mike will go on anything. Mike is one of... Bro, some of these people are like... Like, I can't imagine them existing off camera. Like, I'm just so curious what their lives are like off camera. Like, what do you do? Who are you? What are you?
I don't have you ever met Mike in person?
Yeah, remember?
Was he ever normal?
Well, I don't know why we were on bad terms, but we saw him at a restaurant. You
Bad
can ask
Bunny.
Tabor about this. Well, yeah, but this was before he tried to get with her. And he, like... I feel like we met outside a restaurant, and then he, like, ran away. It was so weird.
Oh, he had threatened to, like, beat you up, I thought,
No,
right?
no, not at that point.
This
No
was
way.
after?
Yeah, this is way long ago. I don't think we made any threats like that. But I just remember him, like, scampering off. And I don't remember why. I remember... Was I with Dan then, or was it just Tabor? Was Dan there, too? I think it was Tabor was next to me, and we looked at each other and, like, laughed, because, like, when we looked to see where Mike had went, we, like, just saw him, like, literally just turning the corner. It was like a Looney Tunes thing. Like, he, like, down the street, he ran away, even though we were, like, all getting food here. I had no idea. I don't know, bro.
Yeah, I don't know. That's probably the only time he's ever ran before, so.
I don't know.
Put his life on the line.
Wait. Although, hold on, wait.
Okay.
Wait, what are you implying this post is?
Ooh, hold on, I gotta really look at it. It was originally, he posted, like, the photo of Hutch. I don't even know if that's a real photo or whatever. But it seemed like he was making fun of him for his looks by posting that, because it's not, like, a great photo or whatever.
I guess maybe. I think it's kind of a meme thing. I think it's more he's making fun of the fact that Mallory spoke to Hutch and then
Talk
had
to him. Yeah,
basically,
I figured that too, yeah.
really pissed that you declined to publish an article that came to us unbidden, that came to you unbidden. It was unbidden by me or Murray, from Richard Hare, who's the editor.
Wait, somebody has this. Let's see how good my recollection was.
I think they want to go in.
One of my favorite things that happened was last TwitchCon, there was a meetup of a whole bunch of political people that I was invited to and I went to. And when we met outside some restaurant, a guy that was with me, was it Dan? I think Dan was with me. And he was like, wait a second, Steven. And I'm like, what's up? And he's like, isn't that Mike from PA? And I'm like, where? And there was some guy that just ran off. Like, as soon as we showed up, he, like, ran up. And I looked on the screen and was like, fuck, I think that is. Like, as soon as I showed up, he unironically ran away from the fucking group we were in. Why? Again, we weren't even, like... no one had made any threats or anything. I just thought it was so weird.
It's a little weirdo.
One of my favorite things that happened was... No one cares, Domi. We heard you.
...in-chief of the Journal Intelligence,
Domi.
and a far more mainstream voice on this issue than Nisbet or Turkheimer or Hardin. And he came to our defense, and he, that would have done a lot to correct the record, but you declined to publish that. And so we went round and round by email. And I got increasingly exasperated over just how I perceived you in the email exchange. And there was some talk of us doing this podcast together, but then I pulled the plug on that because I felt it would be totally unproductive.
What? Hold on. Do you see the difference here? It's still weird to unbutton the shorts to get a lower rise look, but it's a thing. Why do you link me 3 pictures of different waisted jean shorts, but none of them are unbuttoned?
Nah.
Thank you.
And at the end of the email exchange, I said, if you continue to slander me, I will publish this email exchange, because I felt that people should understand the actual backstory here and how this happened and why I'm not doing a podcast with you.
Ooh.
And you did actually publish one more article from Turkheimer that took a shot at us, but basically we went radio silence for a year about, as far as I know. And then what happened is there was an article published in the New York Times by David Reich, a geneticist at Harvard, which made some of the same noises that Murray and I had made. And Murray retweeted it saying, wow, this sounds familiar. And then I retweeted it, taking a snide dig at you, saying something like, well, I hope Ezra Klein's on the case. Racialist pseudoscience never sleeps. And then you responded, writing yet another article about me and Murray. And I felt this article was just as unfair as anything that had preceded it. In particular, I felt that you had summarized our email exchange in a way that was self-serving and that I didn't agree with. And so that prompted me to publish the emails. And I will be the first to admit, and I think...
Do you think discussions on race and IQ should be censored or restricted? Yes. I don't think we should ever have those conversations, ever.
You don't think we should ever have a convo?
No. Why are you asking me? Obviously, I think we should be able to talk about all things. But Destiny reveals his campaign against Snipes likely, and wants the lie. Oh, it's Snow. space. Oh. Okay.
Agree with this, that backfired on me. The public perception of my publishing those emails was that it was not a good look for me at all. And most people who came to those emails cold thought I was inexplicably angry and that you seemed very open to dialogue. And it just, people had to do a lot of work to understand why I was pissed. And most people didn't do that work. I'm not saying that everyone who did the work, who listened to the podcast and read all the articles, would take my side of it. But anyone who didn't do the work thought that I was somehow the aggressor there. In particular, the fact that I was declining to do a podcast with you was held very much against me. And that caused me to change my mind about this whole thing, because I realized, okay, I can't be perceived as someone who won't take on legitimate criticism of his views. And so I went out on social media just to see if, in fact, people really wanted us to attempt this. And after 40 or 50,000 people got back, and I think it was 76% said yes, I decided that I was up for a podcast with you, and you had already said you were up for a podcast with me. And so here we are. And again, much of that's described from my point of view, but I think the timeline is accurate.
This is not my ideal, but I prefer we get into it. The only thing I would say here that you should just change a little bit in there so I don't do it on your behalf is that you didn't email me. What happened is that this piece published out, I tweeted it out. You tweeted a public challenge to me to come on your show.
That's true.
Your producer emailed me to come on your show. I emailed your producer and said, hey, can you connect me to Sam? We should talk about this. And then our email exchange began.
That's true. The first contact was on Twitter, yeah.
Which is not a big deal. I just want to note that.
Good job,
Totally
guys.
true.
We got it all.
Here's what I'd ask. Let's jump into it.
Let's just start with you. What don't I get? Why is your criticism of me and Murray valid? Just give me your take on all of this.
All right. Well, I appreciate that summary. Obviously, and I'm sure we'll get into this stuff, I have disagreements with which articles are fair and which aren't, but I don't think that is where I want to begin this. I'm sure we'll go through that. I want to try to frame what I want to do here today, because I think people can go through, they can read the original Vox articles, all be linked in my show notes. I assume, Sam, they'll be linked in yours. They can read our emails to each other. They can read my article. They can listen to the original podcast. If you would like to be a Sam Harris and Ezra Klein completist, the option is very much there. So I listened to your housekeeping episode the other day, so I think I have some sense, Sam, of where you are coming into this. And I want to give you a sense of where I am in the hopes that it'll be productive. So something you've said over and over and over again to me at this point is that to you from the beginning, I've been here in bad faith. The problem is that I've come to this, coming to slander you, to destroy your reputation, to silence you.
Thank you for the $100.
And I take that as a
You shouldn't donate to me, though. You
I
are
have
future
not been able
schizo,
to
I can
persuade
tell.
you, and maybe I will be today, that I really disagree with you strongly. I think some of the things you're trafficking in are not just wrong, but they're harmful. But I do so in good faith, and I'm here because I want to persuade you. In your podcast...
When is this? This is a 4-year-old conversation. Is it really 4 years old? No, okay, that's what I thought. It's 6 years old, I think. Oh, I'm sorry, 8 years old. It says debate is 2018. It was uploaded in 2022. So did this conversation happen in 2018? Because this is back when the big thing that we were talking about in the online space, and I guess was kind of in the real world too, was Charles Murray, who, is he an economist or something, published that bell curve book, and then everybody fucking went crazy talking about race and IQ and everything. And obviously Sam Harris likes to tackle uncomfortable topics, so he talked about it and thought that, I think, Charles Murray made great arguments, and Sam Harris got upset, and everybody,
That's with Murray. The way I see what's going on here, from my perspective, and one of the tricky things here is that I was not that involved in the original Vox article. I was editor-in-chief at the time, but I didn't assign or edit that. I stand by it. Things you publish when you're editor-in-chief ultimately are on you, and I actually think it's a good piece. But there are times when I can only speak from my perspective, not from the perspective of other people who wrote other things. But the way I read the conversation you had with Murray, and I think you just showed this in your opening here.
Be careful.
You begin that conversation by really framing it around your shared experience responding to politically correct criticism. You say, and I'm quoting you here, in the intervening years, so the intervening years since Murray published the bell curve, that I ventured into my own controversial areas as a speaker and writer. I experienced many hysterical attacks against me in my work. I started thinking about your case being Murray's case, a little, again, without ever having read you, and I began to suspect that you were one of the canaries in the coal mine that I never recognized as such. So you say explicitly in the opening to that podcast that in the treatment of Murray, you saw the seeds of later treatment of you. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about this because something that I've been trying to do here is see this from your perspective. Here is my view. I think you clearly have a deep empathy for Charles Murray's side of this conversation because you see yourself in it. I don't think you have as deep an empathy for the other side of this conversation, for the people being told, once again, that they are genetically and environmentally and at any rate immutably less intelligent, and that our social policy should reflect that. And I think part of the absence of that empathy is it doesn't threaten you. I don't think you see a threat to you in that in the way you see a threat to you in what's happened to Murray. In some cases, I'm not even quite sure you heard what Murray was saying on social policy, either in the bell curve, in a lot of his later work, or on the podcast. And I think that led to a blind spot in this it's worth discussing.
Okay.
I like your podcast. I think you have a big platform and a big audience, and I think it's bad for the world if Murray's take on this gets recast here as political bravery or impartial or non-controversial. So what I want to do here, it's not really convince you that I'm right. I don't think I'm going to do that. And it's not to convince you to like me. I don't think I'm going to do that either. I get that. What I want to convince you of is that there's a side of this you should become more curious about. That you should be doing shows with people like Ibram Kendi, who's author of Stand From the Beginning, which is a book on racist ideas in America, which won the National Book Award a couple years back. People who really study how race and these ideas interact with American life and policy. I think the fact that we are two white guys talking about how growing up non-white in America affects your life and cognitive development is a problem here, just as it was a problem in the Murray conversation. And I want to persuade you that some of the things that the so-called social justice warriors are worried about are worth worrying about, and that the excesses of activists, while very real and problematic, they're not as big a deal as the things they're really trying to fight and to draw attention to. So maybe I'll take a breath there and let you in.
Yeah, okay, that's a great start. So I guess there's a lot to respond to there. I guess the first thing I want to say is that there are two things I regret here, both in our exchange and in my podcast with Murray. And so I should just put those out first, I think. The first is that I was, as you said, very quick to attribute malice and bad faith to you in the email exchange. And it's quite possible I did this when it wasn't warranted. The reality is, the background here, which you alluded to, is that I am so battle-scarred at this point, and I've dealt with so many people who are willing to consciously lie about my views and who will just play the evasion game endlessly. I mean, I've got people who edit the contents of my podcast to make it sound like I've said the opposite of what I've said.
No way.
And then people like Glenn Greenwald and Reza Aslan forward these videos consciously knowing they're misrepresenting me. I mean, there's been so much pushback about this. There's been so much correction that at this point, the possibility that it's not conscious, the chance of that is zero, right? So I'm dealing with people on a daily basis who are just happy to smear me dishonestly simply to see what will stick. And in fact, when I published our emails, the tipping point for me was to see that Glenn Greenwald, Reza Aslan, and you in a single hour on Twitter had all hit me with stuff that I perceived to be
they were
totally
snarking
dishonest.
him!
So my fuse is pretty short. I am the first to admit that. And if I treated you unfairly, attributing bad faith when you were just led by sincere conviction that I had made an error or that you were arguing for something that was so important and that I wasn't seeing it, that is on me. Now, that said, I think your argument is where it pretends to be factual, wherever you think it is factual, it is highly biased by political considerations. And these are political considerations that I share. The fact that you think I don't have empathy for people who suffer just the starkest inequalities of wealth and politics and luck, it's telling and it's untrue. I think it's even untrue of Murray. And the fact that you're conflating the social policies he endorses, like the fact that he's against affirmative action and he's for universal basic income, and I know you don't happen to agree with those policies, you think that would be disastrous. There's a good faith argument to be had on both sides of that conversation. That conversation is quite distinct from the science, and even that conversation about social policy can be had without any allegation that a person is racist or that a person lacks empathy for people who are at the bottom of society. So that's one distinction I want to make. And the other thing that I regret, which I think this is the thing you're taking me to task for, and I understand it, but I do regret that in the preface to my podcast with Murray, I didn't add some full discussion of racism in America. And the reason why I didn't, or certainly at least one reason why I didn't, is that I had maybe 2 months before that done a podcast with Glenn Lowry, the economist at Brown, who happens to be black. And Glenn is fantastic. He's got his own podcast, The Glenn Show, which everyone should watch.
I talked to that guy.
But so Glenn was on my podcast, and we were talking about race and violence in America. And I prefaced the conversation with a fairly long statement about the reality of white privilege and the past horrors of racism. And when I got to the end of it, Glenn pretty much chastised me for thinking that it was necessary for me to say something like that just because I'm white, right? The fact that any conversation about race and violence, especially coming from a white guy like me, has to be bracketed.
Yeah, but he's also like a conservative black guy, right? So obviously he's going to say that, right?
Elaborate virtue signaling on that point. So he basically said, I mean, these aren't his words, but this was his attitude. Basically said, obviously, since you're not a racist asshole, it can go without saying that you understand that slavery was bad and that Jim Crow was bad and that you totally support civil rights. And so his take on my saying that, it was not a total surprise given who Glenn is, but the fact that he viewed it as fairly pathetic that I felt the need to do that and that it couldn't just go without saying.
What is my company here? I didn't know Destiny's in the Wiki Liberalism series. Commentators. I don't know who Alterman is. Do I? Bogosian? Bonnell? Friedman? Lex Friedman? Keith Olbermann? Rachel Maddow? Okay.
I remembered that. And I mean, obviously your point is well taken. I mean, two white guys talking about differences in IQ across races or across populations. I mean, if ever there's a time to signal that you understand that racism is still a problem in the world, that's it, right? And while we did say some things that I think should still have been fully exculpatory, I mean, for anyone paying attention, I think it should be obvious, with a modicum of charity extended to us, that Murray and I are not racist, and that what we were saying was not coming from a place of racial animus. But, I mean, that is the backstory for why I didn't have some kind of elaborate framing of the conversation.
So I want to be, this is good because I think this gets much closer to the meat of where we actually disagree. And something I want to be clear about is
Thomas Friedman
was wrong in that podcast is not that you didn't virtue signal. It's not that you didn't come out and say, hey, listen, just before I start this up, I want everybody to know I'm not a racist. And by the way, I'm not here to say you're a racist. I don't think you are. We have not called you one. I actually think that's a different set of things, and we should talk later. I think this would actually be a good conversation for us to have about literally just what racism is, how we use that word in this conversation. But my criticism of your podcast, and by the way, my criticism also...
Hassan's wiki has no mention of Collargate, despite it being so big that even the vice president joked about it. Wait, is that true? The Collargate is not on Hassan Piker's wiki? There must be a fight. There must be an active comment section or talk section that fights over it.
Of Murray, and this is useful because I can work backwards through your answer here, is not that you didn't excuse yourself. It's that in a conversation about an outcome of American life, right? How do African Americans and whites score on IQ tests in America today? What happens when somebody sits down and takes a test today? That is an outcome of the American experiment, an experiment we've been running in this country for hundreds of years. You did not discuss actually how race and racism act upon that outcome. You did not discuss, I mean, amazingly to me, you all didn't talk about slavery or segregation once. And what I'm saying here is not that you lack empathy, although I am saying in a different space, I think you have a sense of what Murray's going through that is different from your sense of what other people who are hurt in this conversation go through. I do believe that. But as it comes to the way you actually conducted the conversation, I'm arguing that you lacked a sense of history, that you didn't deal in a serious way with the history of this conversation, a conversation that has been going on literally since the dawn of the country, a conversation that has been wrong in virtually every version, in every iteration we've had in America before. The other thing I want to say about this, and this gets very importantly to Charles Murray's work. You're a neuroscientist, and so I get that you look at Murray and you look at the bell curve, and what you see are the tables and the appendices and the kind of scientific version of Charles Murray. I'm a policy journalist. My background is I live in Washington, D.C. I cover politics. Charles Murray, not just to me, what he literally is what we call a policy entrepreneur. He's somebody who his entire career has been spent at Washington think tanks. He's at the American Enterprise Institute, where I have a lot of friends, and I respect that organization quite a bit. And he argues in different ways and throughout his entire body of work for policy outcomes. His book before The Bell Curve is called Losing Ground. It's a book about why we should dissolve the Great Society programs. By the way, when he was selling that book, he said, a lot of whites think they're racist, and this is a book that tells them they aren't. Then he came out with The Bell Curve, and we'll go through this, and I'll quote this back to you, but The Bell Curve's final chapter, he says, why did I do any of this? Why did I talk about any of this? Him and Richard Herrnstein, obviously the co-author of that book, do. And he says, the reason I did it is because we in America need to re-embrace a politics of difference. We need to understand that we are cognitively different from each other, not just by race, but other folks too, but by race.
In retrospect, who won the race and IQ debate between you and JF? JF has a super formal background in that education. I don't, and I don't think I ever did enough reading to like dig into that as hard as I needed to, but I don't even remember the arguments that he was making. I feel like the race and IQ shit was another one of those things that like, it seemed really complicated, and then when you start reading more into it, things maybe kind of emerge a little bit more clearly, and then maybe this is just the course of everything. It's that Dunning-Kruger curve. But then it's like, actually things are like, it's pretty hard to tease apart certain things when it comes to like gene and expression of said gene. And even like in some ways, the separation of these things is almost foolish. And then you also run into weird things where, I'll never remember this, I'm sorry. They're just weird like statistical things that I learned that make things weird too. Where if you over control, I don't even know statistically how you deal with this, but if you control too much for variables, you actually destroy your test by having it too well controlled. Like, let's say that I'm trying to figure out, I need to figure out what difference the amount of sleep contributes to how well somebody does in school. And it's like, okay, well, I've got a bunch of people that sleep a ton and a bunch of people that don't sleep much. The people that don't sleep much get bad scores. The people that seem to sleep more get good scores. But let's start running some controls here. So let's control for a socioeconomic status. Okay, wipe away all of that. Okay, let's control for 2 parents in the household. Okay, wipe away that. Let's control for understands the importance of sleep. Control away for that. That at some point you end up controlling away for so many things. The only thing you have left in your cohort, you've actually controlled away all of the there's a name for, like, it's not this, it's like contributory variables or something, where there might be like an underlying thing that's like powering two things, and now you've controlled so much at the top you've actually lost the difference. And when you talk about things like heritability, you get into really weird worlds of like, well, how much of a particular phenotype is like the difference between one thing and the next, how much of that is controlled by genetic difference? And even just like on a statistical level, it's a very difficult question to answer, especially because you're talking like it's just averages and everything else. Like if you have like 3 plants and you've got like a heritability of 0.9, I think it's said that 90% of the difference between one plant and the next should be attributed by like gene versus environment. In like the aggregate, I don't know if it's in the aggregate, because like, but there are still things that you could do theoretically to the environment that would completely and totally destroy one crop from the next, right? Like if you starve a child, you can have a twin and one is starved and one isn't, and then the starved twin fails on every single level, even though genetically they're the same material, right? Obviously, because you're completely robbing it of an environment to grow. There's just like, it's really, 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 really complicated. Genetic stuff is insanely complicated when you're trying to figure out like causal relationships between like highly polygenetic traits and then the underlying genes, and then trying to attribute that to clusters of people. And then, yeah. And it doesn't help that like, this is a conversation that very early on, in my opinion, very early on, this conversation was held hostage by everybody was just fucking retarded. Like, obviously, you have all the people on the race realist side who think that like, oh, well, there's a black race that we can talk about. There's a white race that we can talk about. It's like, well, if you really want to get into like the genetics and everything, it's never going to be that clean. Obviously, this is stupid, right? Skin color is the way that you're determining your underlying genetics. Like, this is dumb. So then it comes down to like how like you run these GWASPs or whatever, genome-wide association panels or whatever. It's just all this shit. But then on the other side, you have people who are like, it is impossible to even conceive of the fact that huge populations that have been separated from each other for 100 generations or whatever could have on the aggregate like some kind of like difference between traits genetically. Like that's impossible and inconceivable. I can't possibly think of that, even though, I mean, like obviously we can see there, at the very least, there's some physical differences that we can obviously see. Now, does that cash out eventually to some kind of IQ or brain difference? I mean, who knows? It's hard to say, but it's very, very, all of that it's very complicated. It's like very complicated. Or maybe if I dove even more, maybe I'd find better answers. I didn't have the interest as much as I did for like COVID or other things.
Well, and that understanding that changes what we should do in social policy. He literally says, and again, I can quote this to you if you'd like, he says, for one thing, we have all these low cognitive capacity women giving birth. And by having these social supports for poor children in this country, we are subsidizing them to give birth. And what we need to do is take those subsidies away. So these women, who according to his book are disproportionately African-American, their poor children do not get as much federal support when they are born, and so they are disincentivized to have as many children. He also says that we have all these folks who are Hispanic coming up over the border, that our immigration policy is letting in too many low IQ people. And while he's not quite as prescriptive in that part, he's pretty clear that he wants us to change our immigration policy in order to resist dysgenic pressure. So I'm just going to finish this up. The other thing, you brought up his UBI work. And this is why, the reason I bring this up is that the reason I think Charles Murray's work is problematic is that he uses these arguments about IQ and a lot of other arguments he makes about other things to push these points into the public debate, where he is very, very, very influential. He's not by any means a silent.
I also think that yeah, there's so many people. There are really dumb people on both sides of this. There are really dumb people to the left of this, though. Like people on the left really don't like talking about anything related to biology at all, unless it's about how special like minority groups are. It's pretty cringe and retarded. But once he's pressured, is Windstorm like a better way to pressure more, or is it just start have to beat on him? Fuck, I had a thing I was going to say. Oh. There is like a broader interesting question that is undeniable, though, but is still almost equally uncomfortable, which is like, I think we're increasingly designing a successful society where you really do have to fit a certain like mold to be successful. And that mold is like person who is okay sitting inside of a cubicle all day long and doesn't mind like getting very little physical activity and can like stare at a computer screen. And there might be something to be said for like, how fair is that socially, like this is the behavior that tends to be rewarded the most economically right now. But if you obviously that conversation doesn't even necessarily have to be tied to race. But what are you going to do?
Actor in Washington. He gives congressional testimony. He won the Bradley Prize in 2016 and got a $250,000 check for it. His book on UBI, it is completely of a piece with this. I reviewed that book when it came out. It's an interesting book. People should read it. But it is a way of cutting social spending, according to Murray's own numbers. He says it would cut social spending by $1 trillion in 2020. To give you a sense of scale, Obamacare cost $2 trillion over 10 years. So this is another book in a different way that is a huge argument for cutting social spending, which in part he justifies by saying we are trying to redress racial inequality based on an idea that is a product of American history, when in fact it is some combination of innate and environmental, but at any rate, it is not something we're going to be able to change. And so we should stop trying, or at least stop trying in the way we have been.
Just implying some people work better in fields? Hell yeah, brother. But I mean, it's probably true. Like, I'm sure everybody is like biologically suited towards, or it's probably not unimaginable that like different people just have different talents. But I think that in society, we're choosing for like a narrower range of like, can you sit in front of a computer? We've been doing this for at least 3 decades of my life. Like, can you sit in front of a computer screen and type all day and not go crazy and lose your fucking mind? And that seems to be selected for a lot more for making money. Twirling lunge. You know what? Let's spam this one. Fuck it. Nice. And you missed, you fucking retard.
Okay, Ezra, again, you can't conflate his views on social policy with an honest discussion of empirical science. Those are two separate conversations. You can agree about the data or disagree in a good faith way about the data and have a separate conversation about what to do in response to the data and then disagree in a good faith way about that. Now, I'm not defending Murray's view of what the social policy should be. I'm open-minded about universal basic income. I think there can be a good faith debate about many of these topics. It's a completely separate conversation. And I totally share your concern about racism and inequality. And again, I have no interest in using science to establish differences between races. But the problem is, and I have publicly criticized people who do have an interest in using science that way. And one of my critical questions of Murray was, why pay attention to any of this stuff? And I've said publicly that I didn't think his answer was great on that. And I'm not interested in paying attention to this stuff, and yet I have to in order to have conversations like this. But the problem is that the data on population differences will continue to emerge whether we're looking for it or not. And the idea that one should lie about these data or pretend to be convinced by bad arguments that are politically correct, or worse, that it's okay to malign people or even destroy their reputations if they won't pretend to be convinced by bad arguments, that's a disaster. Morally and politically and intellectually, that is a disaster. And that's where we are. Right? That's my criticism of what you have done at Vox and what Turkheimer and Nisbet and Hardin have done. And the truth is, for whatever reason, okay, however noble it is in your head, you've been extraordinarily unfair.
Why are you watching this? It was just to illustrate that Ezra can be strong in debates. Okay, sure. I don't care that much.
So if you're having a tough time, I hope you come out of this discussion feeling seen, as my friends in the Democratic Party say. My guest today is pretty good at staying hopeful. Heather Cox Richardson, author of Letters from an American on Substack. It is one of my favorite Substacks. Heather, thanks for being here.
Such a pleasure to be here, my friend.
It's so fun when you're here. I had a question. I was looking back at when the bicentennial was, and I missed it by just a smidge, but you might have been like 10, 8? I don't know. I don't want to do it, but do you remember the bicentennial?
Truthfully, I can't do the math myself. I was born in 62, and that was 76, so I would have been 13.
Okay, so 13. So do you remember it?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So remember, when I was young, I lived in quite a rural area, so we didn't do the big, we saw the tall ships, but only online. Although I have an interesting tall ship story for you if you're interested. But we certainly were paying attention to what was going on around the country. I had been paying close attention to Watergate, even as a young kid, so I was very conflicted about how to approach 76. But, there were the reenactors, which were interesting themselves. There were the focus on the bicentennial minutes on TV. There was the idea of people celebrating the Declaration and so on. So we did all that. And then actually that day was cloudy where I live on the coast of Maine. And we spent the day with friends. I hate to say this, but actually painting, creosoting a deck And then we had some kind of a cookout, and my friends and I actually set off fireworks that night. And the guy that I grew up with, like a brother to me, actually got caught by one of the fireworks and got pretty bad burns, second-degree burns, not third-degree burns. But ever since then, I've had a real fear of fireworks. So there you go. There was the 4th of July in 1776 for Heather Cox Richardson.
In 1776 and 1976.
1976. There
Yeah,
you go.
1976. Perfect. That sounds like a right up to the getting burned by fireworks. That sounds like a very traditional American 4th of July. But considering that it was the bicentennial, the 200th anniversary of America's founding, was there like a vibe? Like, do you remember people feeling celebratory? Do you remember people feeling proud? Were there think pieces in the newspaper about America's complicated history, or was it a pretty straightforward celebration of the United States?
Well, do remember that I was 13 years old and
Sure.
in a very rural area. But that being
Okay.
said, even at the time, I remember there was a lot of conflict. You know, we were just coming out of Watergate. It was not clear what the future was going to look like. To some degree, my earliest memories were the Vietnam War, which
Okay,
was...
wait. What's going on in Kick Chat? Boob is auto-modded? Did somebody aggressively turn up our auto-mod or what? What do we got going on over here, guys? Why is Boob auto-moderated? Destiny... Crispy's working on it. Oh. It's not even on the list. Okay.
not really far in the rearview mirror. There were changes coming, and good changes as well as bad changes, right? So in 1975, you get Bruce Springsteen hitting the charts and being on the cover of Both Time and Newsweek on the same
For
week.
Born
Which
in
is
the USA?
incredible. Pardon me?
For Born in the USA?
Oh, you are so cute.
Turn off AI mod. Wait, is AI mod the same thing as auto mod, or is auto mod a different thing than AI mod? Moderation. Oh, AI moderation. Okay, I've changed it. Is that... There you go.
My young friend. Born to Run, of course. Yes. So there you go.
Born to Run.
And that came out in 75, August in 75. And he hits the cover of the Time and Newsweek. It was clear, if you were paying attention to music, certainly, that we were entering a new era. Then you've got the rise of Jimmy Carter in Georgia and the support that he has with musicians down there and so on. So you had this tension. And that's one of the things that I actually wanted to point out talking to you is that I think when you look back, everyone remembers the rosy stuff, right? You do it in your own life. You also do it in your country. But the truth is that every 50 years, there is always tension in the United States. And curiously, at these 50-year intervals, sometimes the tension is higher than it is in other times, not because of that anniversary, but simply because of where those dates fall. So you have the 20s, 26, right? 1926, when the country is deeply divided between those people who are succeeding in the new economy of the the Republicans in the 20s, but the farmers and the laborers and people of color who are being left behind. And then in 1876, you've got the real problems of the American South in that.